Hey there folks, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and with the upcoming update to Post Scriptum, I figured today I'd do a little tutorial or breakdown of a critical skill and arguably one of the secrets of Post Scriptum. Now, in a lot of my videos where you guys see the sort of long-form games cut down into shorter extracts, you always ask me, how comes I always end up in so much action? Or, how do I rack up so many kills? There was one game in particular recently where I got 75 downs using a sniper rifle on the French team. And I get these questions a lot. And whenever somebody asks that, I always reply, I just read the map. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, do you look at markers? No, I just read the map. And that's effectively what I'm going to be breaking down as a skill today. I'm going to be talking about how you can understand the layout of what's happening on your map to pinpoint enemy locations. It's a very simplistic process, but it's something that effectively allows you to identify regions of threat that you should be aware of, especially when maneuvering between objectives, but also if there are threats you need to neutralize on the way towards objectives. And this entire sort of methodology that I'm going to be going over with you today is everything I do in-game. I just don't say it out loud, I do it in my head, and in a lot of my gameplay you can always see me glancing at my map. I'm always going, alright, where's the threat coming from? Where's the threat coming from? Or what's going to be happening? And if you happen to catch any of my live streams, which by the way are happening regularly now, so feel free to hit that subscribe button to see more, you would know that I do this sort of verbally on those streams. So let's break this down. This skill is going to be vitally important to all of Post Scriptum, including the upcoming update, so I feel like a lot of people should know it. I'm also going to include various attacking and defending scenarios to give you a better grasp of what we're on about here. So let's start with this first mini gameplay, or a little bit of gameplay that I was in, and it was an attacking effort on a map that was seemingly just riddled with enemies, and I was trying to get through to my squad lead, which, by the way, this is really important if you want a squad lead, because, understanding your map is the best way to form effective attacks and defense. And I was trying to get through to him that the options we were using here on Healsome just weren't working, and that we needed to try something a little bit new. So let's look at the layout here. We've got 2 MSPs, 1 rally point that I know of. There's probably another friendly rally point, sort of in the I-11 sub-key 9 region, I would estimate the other blueberry marker, based on where they've been coming from, is we have an enemy tank marked, and we got a lot of dead bodies, including myself. I got capped trying to push forward into the objective, because it's always worth trying, just because there's loads of people there and a couple of them are dying, it's still worth the effort. And in Post Scriptum, ticket depletion is very important. You don't want to be burning tickets overly and over again, just trying to get onto an objective. And the big problem you have with this offensive here is what's known as a one-sided offensive. If you were to cut the line from the road that runs from G11 all the way up to I8, you can see that they effectively have a 180-degree cone of coverage because nothing is coming at them from the other side. And in Post Scriptum, everything is very reactive. So whenever people see contact, they tend to look or move towards said contact. So right now, that northwestern side has a hugely exposed area and a great place to get into the action. And in fact, if you look, there's a section of tree land and, various woods and whatnot in G9 and G10, which in G10 connects to a pathway into H10. So when you have this sort of one-sided 180-degree field of view opposition, it's very easy for them to just funnel into the same areas and get destroyed. So naturally, attacking from the northwest would make the most sense, and if you look in the northwest, every individual road and dotted and solid line that you see typically has a bush line to accompany it. And those bush lines are a very easy and effective way of forming an offensive push, and something that I highly recommend because it is relatively simplistic just to use them either one side of the hedgerow or in between the hedgerow or running between the hedges to cut off line of sights from potential enemies on the objective. Personally here, I would probably use the south side of the hedgerow on G10 and H10 just because it cuts off the line of sights to the buildings which are primarily around the objective, which based on where everybody is dying right now is probably where they're at right now. So flash forward later on into the game, and my general tactic was seemingly working for a while. I did get spotted a little bit, but considering I was all the way in the east, I considered maneuvering to the west using one of these roads, trench lines, or general bushes. And I got pretty close, and eventually I did actually get out to the western side and attacked from the northwest. And whilst I was individually effective at getting on the objective and making sure that I was there capturing or killing enemies or taking out MG bunkers, Ultimately, without an entire squad or element pushing that direction, it's very frustrating and you know, you couldn't get a lot done. But if you can get your whole unit over there, you can be really effective, and I think we probably would have won that objective had we had that sort of pincer movement from both the west and the east. But fundamentally, there are three things I look at when I think, hey, you know, where are the enemies right now? The obvious one is looking for markers that pre-exist. I don't always trust these things, but they do tend to be a decent indicator. Next is advantage positions, such as positions of elevation, buildings that have solid cover, or buildings that have a height advantage. And the final thing is just simple reactivity. You know, if you've got a cluster of blueberries dying in one given direction, I think it's safe to say they've probably got enemies surrounding them. You know, they've probably got enemies directly on top of them, or within reasonable visible range to take them out. Typically, I'd say the average engagement in Post Scriptum is anywhere between sort of 40 to 100 meters across open ground, and even closer when the situation gets close to the objective. So it's quite easy to identify where they're coming from. You know, I could say right now that the majority of the objective's enemies right now, or just the majority of the enemies in the game, are anywhere between the sort of H10 sub key 2 to, I don't know, I9 sub key 3 probably. That just entire cross section of buildings is just a complete write-off right now, and I would recommend saying that probably that gigantic white warehouse, which is just on the map there, is a position of advantage because it has great coverage of the open fields, so I'd expect enemies to be there. And lo and behold, later on in the game, I did find that there were quite a few of them pouring out that general objective. But on the whole, and most importantly, I'd say that people in Post Scriptum are relatively simplistic. You know, the second they hear gunfire, you know, they're like a magpie to a shiny object. They tend to go in that direction. So it's relatively easy, in my opinion, to pinpoint where people are looking and where people are going just based off of that alone. The same can absolutely apply to any given defensive objective, and in this case you always want kind of like a 360-degree coverage on any given objective, but with the least amount of coverage in between the objective that you're currently at and the objective that you're going to be defending in the future, because very often it's difficult for enemies to loop round without being destroyed or engaged with, but it shouldn't be something that you don't expect. You know, there should always be some coverage there, but not a lot. So if you can get that kind of 360-degree coverage with either an individual squad or multiple squads, which is more preferable, then you do have a solid reactivity network on that objective, and anybody who happens to get into an engagement can then pinpoint where that engagement is coming from, where the people are coming from, and where the threat is coming from. Typically on defensive objectives as well, I think it's safe to say that what I said for attacking objectives is true for defending objectives. You know, looking at these trench lines, looking at the woodlands that are surrounding you in the green markouts, looking for things like bush lines that can be used to cut off a visual advantage. Any intelligent or remotely intelligent enemy is always going to rally to those things. No enemy is just going to run over an open field unless they're completely stupid, so they're always going to look for something like that. Now, for the most part in Post Scriptum, I'd say the average Joe player tends to go for the most obvious bush line or trench line into the objective because they're trying to get kills quickly. They just want to get onto the objective and kill people. It's as simple as that, and very few of them actually have the ability to delay that kind of instant gratification, so to speak, and, you know, go around and flank in a relatively successful way. So I always tend to look there first, but, you know, keep an eye out for surprises. Some squads can surprise you, and ultimately, if you feel like you're being probed, which is the word I use, you know, if you get one or two enemies coming from the south or the east, or somewhere where you just don't expect them to be, typically that means that there is a lot more of them in that direction. You know, you don't just suddenly appear there. There's always going to be a rally point or a vehicle taking people to those locations. And when you see somebody in that location, that should be the sort of wake-up alarm for your entire squad to start looking in that direction, because chances are they figured out a routing to your objective that has very minimal contact and is easy to do, which means that they're going to try and get into the objective before they open fire. And that's the most effective way to capture an objective, is by taking it out from underneath enemies when nobody realizes that they're there, or making noise at the very last minute. So if you see that random enemy to the south that no one was expecting, he didn't just run there, he's definitely there with some friends. Anywho folks, I hope that helps clarify. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comment section below. As always, thank you for watching. It's been me, TheTacticalBrit, and I'll catch you again in another video. Also, I actually have some exclusive Normandy footage coming soon, so make sure you're subscribed to see that too.